Laila, pardon me. See, I did it. I massacred your name. I knew I would do it.
I knew it. I knew it.
Damn it! I was so close. You actually are a bit of a journalist. As a matter of fact, you were one of the winners in the CKNW Talk Show Idol contest. You had your own radio show for a few weeks there on CKNW. So you should probably be doing this show instead of me, to be honest. And I guess I understand you're a bit of a freelance writer as well, and you've got some background in journalism, and you're reading some of your blog posts. You're a very talented writer, and your insights and your no holds barred type of writing impresses me a lot. But what actually prompted you to write this blog post about this? What is your personal interest in the Scott Young case?
I think anybody who followed the talk show Idol contest last year, it was 2007 that I won, would be aware I had a guest on one of my shows leading up to that win, who you may recall, Gertie Guman was her name. She's an Indo-Canadian woman who was shot in the face by her estranged husband, and she survived. And during the course of that incident, he shot her. He assumed because he shot her in the head that she was dead. He turned the gun on himself and killed himself. And you know what? Thank God he did, because really the criminal justice system does not need to be another one of these child. So to me, that was the ultimate justice for him.
Agreed.
She had the last laugh because she lived. And she is one of the most amazing, inspirational women I've ever talked to. She was on my show. We had an exclusive radio interview. It was her only radio interview. And during that radio interview, for the first time publicly, I actually talked about my experiences. And I previously was in a long-term relationship with an abusive man. And I have to say is that when I see pictures of Scott Young, and I see Scott Young's expressions, and I see his mannerisms, and I see his eyes, you know, it reminds me of my ex, to be honest, because it does take a certain type of person to do that kind of thing. And I don't know if it's, I don't know if it's something psychological. I don't know if it's a learned characteristic. I don't know what makes someone deal with anger that way. But I've sort of made it a little bit of a pet project to try and take away some of the shame that women feel about being abused. And by taking away that shame and making women come forward and talk about their experiences, perhaps, if it inspires one person, if it can inspire the justice system to change the way things are done, if people talk about it a little bit more, maybe in, years down the road, this will be something that will be completely socially unacceptable too.
I hope that's the case. But your blog is well read. How many people do you figure come by and look at your blog on any kind of regular basis?
Oh, I have tons and tons of daily readers. It's kind of funny. We were speaking earlier. I've had even some enemies. I would say some people who have threatened me in the past who now I think have turned into pseudo fans. I don't know how that happened, but I have quite a few. I get a lot of feedback, and I take a lot of ideas sometimes from people who leave comments. I have a lot of regulars who come and comment. We talk a lot about politics. We talk a lot about these issues. And one thing that I did want to say too is that part of what's happened with Scott Young, and I don't know if a lot of people are aware of this, part of the reason why things are so easy for him with this particular conviction is the fact that this is not his first experience going around the block.
No.
I think most people are aware. In 2002, he was charged with the assault of his second wife, a woman by the name of Wendy. The charges at that time were stayed after Crown and defense counsel agreed that the matter could be resolved by Scott Young agreeing to undergo counseling. And therefore, it's my belief at that time that left him with no criminal record. If charges are stayed,
that's correct.
Charges are dropped, there was nothing done,
that's correct.
No criminal record per se. Now, why this is so important in this current case and what's going on right now, because a lot of people are having a hard time understanding how he could have done all the things he's done and face no jail time. Well, look at it like this. Crown counsel cannot go back to 2002, and neither can anyone else and say, hey, look at this. He's done this before. This is not his first offense.
No.
He is a repeat offender. This is a pattern. You can't do that. If there's no criminal charges, you can't go back and refer to that, right?
That's correct.
So, what's happening now, they're treating this almost as if this was his very first offense ever and that he's never done this before.
That's exactly how they're treating it.
There you go. And this is not something new. It used to be when there was a police attendance at a domestic incident, You know, something happened, neighbors call police, a woman calls police, whatever, police show up. It used to be up to the police to determine whether or not charges were laid.
Right.
That's the way it was. And although charges were automatically laid, the woman who was assaulted had nothing to say in it. A lot of times the charges were dropped because women were hesitant to testify, they were scared to testify. If they're a stay-at-home mom, they have no income. There's so many various cultural and sociological reasons why women, you know, refuse to testify.
Oh boy.
However, under that system, there was a higher incidence of conviction than under the current system. A few years ago, they changed the domestic assault policy in British Columbia, and now it's comprised of a system where Crown will decide, like the police will say, okay, we think that this guy should be charged, but it'll go to Crown, and Crown will decide if charges should be laid based on the likelihood of conviction. If they think that the guy, you know, maybe this was a first-time offense in their eyes, it wasn't very serious, maybe he just slapped her rather than hit her, maybe they think the woman is hesitant to testify, they may not lay charges, or they may route the fellow out into counseling or what they call alternative measures. So there is no more mandatory charging.
No.
A lot of men who do this know that.
And they figure they can get away with it.
That's right. And they know, I mean, come on, court-ordered counseling, they don't say you have to participate. Court-ordered counseling means you have to go and sit there, and you have to complete 10 hours or whatever, you know, the punishment is that you've been given. And as long as you report to your probation officer on time, and you're not caught with a weapon, and you're not caught with alcohol, and you don't take any conditions, and you're a good boy, you'll usually get a conditional sentence.
Right.
You complete your conditions, then you have no criminal record. That's basically what it is.
Yeah, that's pretty much
it. It's like a free pass, and that's what's happened with Scott Young. He's gotten a free pass because no charges were laid in the first incident. This has to be treated as if this was his first and original and only incident.
No, that's crap. No, I agree. That's ridiculous. You know, a lot of people feel passionately about the issue on both sides. I promised you our audience would have questions for you, and I don't promise they're not going to make you angry. Hey,
bring it on.
I've got a gentleman by the name of Tim Felder in my room here. He's thinking about running for mayor himself out in Abbotsford. He takes a bit of a different take on this whole thing, saying that the assault issue is actually, in his words, quote, a non-issue because it has nothing to do with his job. What is your response?
Oh, BS. BS. I mean, like going back to the whole child molester thing. What if Scott Young had molested a child? Hypothetically, what if it had been a child molestation case that is so repugnant to almost every single person out there that it just makes you want to vomit?
Agreed.
Are you telling me that that has nothing to do with his job, that you want your mayor sitting up there and he's a child molester? Give me a break. How can it have nothing to do? It's a judgment call. If you have the kind of judgment or something going on in your head that's so twisted that it can make sense to commit a crime like this, how can you say that that doesn't have anything to do with your job? It's a judgment call. It speaks to your judgment, it speaks to your character, and it speaks to who you are as a person.
You're getting in trouble here in the chat room because people are saying you're talking about hypothetical child molestation, which didn't happen in this case. This is an assault, some would argue a minor assault, on Glenn Shaw and Colleen Preston. They're saying this kind of, maybe that you're overreacting a little bit here, and it's just kind of a minor thing, and it doesn't represent everything he's saying.
Who's to judge that it's a minor assault? Because we haven't heard every single thing that's happened. He was actually, how many of those charges were dropped for criminal harassment?
Yeah.
Does anybody out there know what criminal harassment is? It's called stalking. It's called showing up and being in a car outside somebody's house and intimidating them. And I'll tell you something, speaking from experience, and sure, I'll say right up front, I'm completely biased on this. That emotional, you know, crap that someone puts you through is every bit as hard, if not harder to deal with, than the physical stuff. Because I tell you, someone can take a knock in your face, and whether it's a slap or whether it's a punch or whatever, you know, somebody can take a swing at you, and it's over and it's done. And you might have some effects like, oh, now somebody's going to wave and I think they're going to hit me. But that emotional stuff, it takes a long time to get that out of your system.